Thanks for being here for this education working group meeting today. Let's go around, just say our names and organizations. So I can start us. I'm Landon. I'm with SB Act as the operations manager, and I'll pass it over to Marcy.
Hi, I'm Marcy Wimbish, and I'm a volunteer with SB Act.
Will you pass it to someone else? Oh, you're muted.
I'll pass it to Cassie, sorry.
No, it's all good.
Thank you, Marcy. I'm Cassie Bresner, and I'm a volunteer with SB Act and do trainings for the Human Trafficking 101.
We pass it to someone.
I will pass it to Elsa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elsa Granados, and I'm the Executive Director of Standing Together to End Sexual Assault. So nice to be here with everyone.
And why don't we go to Edwin?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Edwin Weaver. I'm the Executive Director at Fighting Back Santa Maria Valley, and I'll pass it to Audrey.
Hi everyone, my name is Audrey and I'm a prevention specialist with Fighting Back Santa Maria Valley, and I specialize in STD education and prevention. And I will pass it on to Jeff. Did you go?
Thank you. Jeff Schaefer, Director of Initiatives for SB Act, and I'll pass it to Jim.
Jim Wright, and I volunteer with SB Act.
Great. And we have several people who emailed to say they couldn't make it today. Anne and Rita and someone else that I'm not remembering, but I'm grateful to you all for making it out. So wanted to start us today just to keep it in front of us. We have an ongoing kind of spreadsheet where we're just trying to track all the different kinds of human trafficking trainings that are happening in the school systems in our county. So I'm posting the link in the chat window. Please do feel free to save this, but I'm also going to share my screen briefly here. And then Marcy, do you want to just update on or just remind everybody what this is about?
Yeah, sure. So we're just trying to keep abreast of where training is being done in the different schools. And I just want to encourage everybody to sort of go, everybody has this shared spreadsheet, and the link, Landon just put the link in the chat, but I just want to encourage everyone to sort of go into the spreadsheet and make sure it's up to date, and just make sure all of the trainings that are on here are actually getting done. And if they're not, like, let us know, and so we can try to figure out something else, or yeah. So just trying to keep this up to date. So any support that you guys could provide in keeping this spreadsheet up to date. I think it's probably mostly Fighting Back, North Crisis, and Stessa, and then Christy is doing some in CARP. But anything you guys can do to make sure it stays up to date, and let us know if trainings that are on here are for whatever reason not happening. That would be really appreciated.
And are there any updates while we have partners on the call about education going on within the local schools? Great. Yes, go ahead, Elsa.
Are we tracking stuff that's not school? What I was able to see on screen right now is only schools, but are we tracking those that are to youth serving organizations or otherwise?
Separately from this, yes. And so I can touch base with you. There's the Human Trafficking Task Force has their surveys that they like for us to fill out after we do those kind of human trafficking trainings for other organizations. But for the purpose of this spreadsheet, it's just, we just want to have all the schools mapped out. So, but I can follow up with you with those forms.
And Elsa, can you give us an update on what's happening? Because I think the woman who took over for Bianca we got a returned email from her. So I'm just wondering who's filling in for what used to happen from Bianca.
So myself and Wendy at Stessa.
Okay. Okay, great.
So then let's talk just about general education updates. So Marcy, do you want to share about the partnership with YouthWell?
Yeah, so we've had this really great partnership with Rachel Steidel at YouthWell, and she's providing platforms for us to educate a lot of different people. And she's got a great network, a huge network of people that she's advertising these trainings to. We did one yesterday that was fairly slimly attended. It was about 12 people, but that's still not terrible. But it was at a sort of awkward time. So I think the next one might be similar, but the one after that, when Rachel does these big YouthWell trainings on a Sunday, she actually sends out emails to all of the parents in Santa Barbara Unified. And so they'll all get notified about this training. And she goes through the schools, Parent Square, and they advertise this training. So the one in March, Rachel says she usually gets about 100 participants to her Sunday training. So we're hoping that one will be a really big one. The next two are Tuesday, April 12th from 12 to 1:15 and Sunday, May 15th from 5 to 6:15. And we encourage all of you to reach out to anyone who you know who might be looking for training to attend these trainings as well, because they're, I attended the one yesterday. It was really good, and did most of it. And she had some videos put in, and it was I thought a really effective training. It's geared towards really anyone, people who have no training at all to people who have some training with children and some, it really, but I think the one that I saw yesterday was a little bit different than the typical one, and it seemed to had a little bit more leaning towards parents, which I think is an important audience for us to get to. So yeah, so we have two more coming up, and the one on Sunday, May 15th, we're hoping could be a pretty large one.
Landon, does anyone have a link for that? So that way I can kind of pass that on to people that might be of interest or might benefit from it.
So I put it in the chat window there, and then I'll also send it out with the agenda. But there's RSVP links via that link right there. Thanks, Cassie. Let's see. We also had training with the city of Santa Barbara around homelessness. Jeff, do you want to talk about those trainings?
Sure. We have these regional action plans that we run for State Street, Upper State Street, East Side, and the waterfront, just Santa Barbara City, under our contract with the city of Santa Barbara on homelessness. So a lot of those, if we talk about the waterfront, a lot of people on our calls are hotel owners. And so we know that they have a mandated training they have to do. So Cassie did a training for us on Wednesday. So we did a regional action plan all call, and we recorded it so that those who can't be on the Wednesday at 3 o'clock call can join in later. So a lot of hotel owners will be able to go through the human trafficking 101 training. And I think the key thing we're trying to do through our trainings is, that basic awareness, get people the phone numbers. So if they see something, to report it, kind of that's the idea. It's a very basic training. I think another thing that's come up, so we also do these college trainings. We do human trafficking 101 for some of the colleges, for specifically for UCSB and Westmont. And they've been asking for what does human trafficking 102 and 103 look like? So what do we do for people that want to go in to a little bit of a deeper dive on some of those issues to learn about? So I'd be very interested within the education working group, whether that's something the group wants to tackle. And I think I'm going to try to develop some kind of, there's such a high interest in this issue, right? Once people learn about it, they're very activated and they can't believe it's happening and they want to do something about it. But how can we move from this education? So we have all these people going through education through this wide funnel. How do we figure out where they can line up and be activated, right? Is it through advocacy? Is it through resourcing? Is it through volunteering? We know there's not very many opportunities for individuals, right, to work with this population. And it's also very difficult just to volunteer with agencies around youth, totally understood. But if we could creatively think about what does it look like once we get people educated, if they want to do more, what are our options, and have that be a part of our kind of training structure, I think that'd be really cool. And that's one of the issues I think we need to do is how does education lead to action? So thanks everyone. I really appreciate you, Cassie, doing the training. Got great feedback from people who are on the training. I don't know if you have anything to share, but I think, Landon, that's the one training I've been involved with as far as the homelessness world.
Yeah, I think it was definitely a lot of engagement, and I can see what you're saying, Jeff, that at least the trainings that I've done that people do, they want to know, what can I do? How can I help? What can we do to stop this? And as you're even saying that, I'm wondering if there's a way of, in the survey, polling like what people would like to do to be involved. So maybe in the post survey, like how they would want to be involved, and like whether it's the advocacy, or maybe they have resources, or they know people that can like have services or be able to give to the youth. So maybe there's a place to have them put that in there. And then maybe even having, and I don't know if like subcommittees, or inviting them to quarterly meetings, or getting them engaged in that way and helping, I don't know, maybe that's a way of getting into action. That's just an idea.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Elsa.
Seems to me that when I face that question from audiences, so I guess a significant need for us in this topic area is education. So now we've educated a group of people, and we have trainings that kind of like a train the trainer. So maybe to ask them to join something like that. It's a larger commitment, but that's what they're asking for. And so then we have a group of people who then can turn around, and so that we're not only educating youth in the schools or through youth serving organizations, but even broader than that, wherever we find audiences, faith groups, what have you. And then even subgroups within the faith groups. So I'm thinking of that. On the intervention side, if people want to become involved in that, then that requires some additional training, significant training as well. And that's even a deeper dive. And so I think that we have some avenues available for them to join, at a greater level. But it's, I think, as you said, Cassie, determining what their interests are, because what I find is that if you offer something that they're interested in, then they're more likely to stick around and more likely to continue their volunteerism. So those are just some thoughts that I have, Jeff and Cassie.
No, great thoughts. I think another thing we've seen, and if your organizations can use this, like the Good Sam Safe House or Noah's Anchorage, there have been incentive gift card drives. There have been other things that volunteers are very apt to, like, I'll buy a $25 card. So I think sometimes partner with an individual agency and just saying that for the next 90 days, we're going to focus on Fighting Back Santa Maria Valley or Stessa, and trying to assist if there's any of those kind of needs. So I think we could start to maybe just create a separate spreadsheet of opportunities where people can volunteer or serve or give. That would be a good idea. And I just want to tell you, at our Westmont tag, we have a Westmont Trafficking Action Group, and we did the training there. And one of the students who was there talked about how she was approached multiple times at a parking lot within a big shopping store by a couple of people she believes they were in a van, and it was a trafficking situation. So we just never, it's happening. So it's really good that we continue to do it, like you're saying, Elsa, as much as we can everywhere.
So Oh, go ahead, Edwin.
Hey, this is off topic, but I have to go soon, so I apologize. I just are you guys also, when you do the trainings, talking about some legislation that's coming up that's pretty important, specifically AB 1970? So AB 1970 is in front of the Assembly right now in committee, and what it'll do, it will impose the standard of whether or not this person is a minor or not for the trafficker. They can say, I didn't know, and then their sentence is reduced. This will remove that. If it is a minor, they will be charged with the crime of trafficking, whether they knew or not the person was a minor. And so this law will close that loophole, and therefore punish traffickers like they should be when soliciting or having sex with minors. And so it's a bill that I think deserves a lot of support. And when we're out doing these educational components, if it doesn't conflict with your funding stream, this is something that's important to let the community know of very simple actions that can take place to let your state assembly and senator know that this bill is in the House, and we'd love to see it passed to continue the fight against trafficking. So I just wanted to make sure, if you weren't aware of that bill, I sit on the California Children's Justice Act Task Force, and it was let us know in our legislative meeting last week that this is an important bill and it needs some support. I'll put the link in here if you haven't read it.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. Again, you know, we want to stop the demand and stop the supply, right? So you want to do both.
Yeah.
And so this is on the demand side, making it really, you know, making the consequences of participating in this horrible industry go away.
Yeah.
So anyway, I gotta
Thank you.
jet. Thank you.
Okay.
Being with us.
Great work, everybody.
Bye-bye. Elsa, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, so I just wanted to double up on what Ed was saying, in that I don't know if there is a legislative action committee, but it would be important to have or establish something like that, because then those individuals could do the legwork of researching the legislation that is in front of the various committees and the legislature, and then also draw up templates to be dispersed so that we could get support for that. That's one. And then the other is to help work with legislators to develop legislation that's needed. I think I talked with some of you about changing in the language that's used and to be more survivor centered. Mm-hmm. And so I think that it brings up a great point in that respect.
Great, thanks, Elsa. Jim?
Yeah, I thought it was very helpful to hear what Edwin had to say, but I don't want us to lose track of what I thought was a very important conversation that Jeff was encouraging us to have and that Elsa contributed to. How do we create an accessible on-ramp for people who are interested in supporting the work, but who are not professionals and who are not looking for and don't have the ability to be involved in any way full time, but are open to a greater and potentially growing involvement. And I think most people, given the number of different opportunities for social engagement that there are not going to climb a vertical on-ramp. So it might be that, whether that's the work of the education group, Jeff, or another working group, but I think if we're going to build community support beyond just the fairly narrow range of people on this call, it might be really valuable for us to think together about how do we do that. in ways that are practical, relevant, robust, and smart?
Yeah, I think that's something we could work on. We created this thing called a homelessness response directory for all of our business owners and hotel owners so they can know who to call, what to expect, all that kind of stuff. I think if we created a directory that our interns could keep updated, with opportunities for further training. I mean, some people want to go through the exhaustive 6-month online training, CSEC training. Some people want to just know that they can support a safe house, or so I think if we work with all the organizations, key organizations, and said, okay, who do they call? What can they expect as far as volunteer opportunities or advocacy opportunities? That's
Right.
easily created.
Mhm.
And I think it's a long time coming. And then we just have to be able to, within, our coordinated efforts, try to make sure it's updated and we coordinate it well. The other thing I want to say is we do have a legislative working group. We have historically Terry Jory. I just reached out to her to see whether it's up and running or whether she's going to kick it off again or whether she needs support. But I do think we don't always keep it ahead of these legislative opportunities that are there before us. And I think what Edwin was saying is very important. Then the last thing I'll say is we were looking into a buyer school as well. We were looking into the idea of creating, they have something in, I think it's Orange County. They have a buyer school where buyers have to spend a day going through this program. So a prevention of buying again kind of program. It's been really successful in its approach. We brought it to victim witness for them to look at. It's relatively expensive to get it going, but so we're either looking at COVID basically shut down the conversation. But that is an idea. I think what Edwin had to say about the prevention piece, right? How do we stop the demand locally? That's something I think education-wise we need to look into as well. The team that runs the current buyer school is also very much open for us just sending our people that are arrested to their school. So there are some opportunities there. And Marcy, that was your original entrance for us, was looking into that.
I know. And I was going to say, I thought there was one in LA. I thought that was.
Maybe it was LA, yeah.
Yeah.
So if there is interest around the idea of the response directory, Jeff, I wonder if we should start just a small group to begin pushing that forward. Because I know that with all these ongoing trainings that all of us are doing, it would be really helpful to just have more resources to be able to give to people immediately. So
the buyer school, basically the idea also is just prevention. So people who have purchased, they have hired a prostitute, hired somebody, have to go through the school. They have to go as a part of their prosecution kind of process. They have to finish it. So I can look up, I have a PowerPoint and some data. I can send that to the group, Landon, just to look at, because it's historically. I don't think we scanned the whole thing, but I think we scanned part of it.
that'd be great.
I definitely had a copy of it for a while, and then I brought it back to Landon at some point, but
we have the original, I think, somewhere.
Yeah.
We'll find it.
Yeah.
Okay, the buyer school is really interesting. That sounds valuable. Let's get on top of that. But Landon has just, again, raised this question of, are we going to actually do something about this directory, and who's going to do it? What is the working group's thoughts on that?
I'm curious from Stessa and Fighting Back if that is something that would be useful to you, or if not, what would be useful to you to be able to share out.
I'm fairly new with Fighting Back and I'm still learning everything, but I'm pretty sure with our homeless liaisons and stuff, it would probably be beneficial to them.
Think so. I think that kind of resource would be helpful.
Yeah.
And
So
can I just ask you both, do you actually have ways that, let's say, a Westmont student, just to take an example, who was interested in spending a couple of hours every week being useful to your organization, do you actually have things they could do?
So Jim, I guess speaking for Stessa, it would be easier if we had someone who was interested over a certain period of time to invest time, because a lot of our resources go into training and sensitizing someone to respond. Because, you know, it's not just about responding to survivors, it's about responding to the public in a way that they can hear it. So, you know, to make sure that when a question is asked or a comment that is not on the mark is made, that the educator, the person who's providing the information, does so in a way that's not guarded, does so in a way that's accurate. So a lot of our energy goes into the supervision of those individuals and also in educating them about how to respond properly. So it would be helpful to have someone who commits for, say, 1 semester or 2 semesters, as opposed to, well, for the next 2 weeks, can I come in for 5 hours?
Right. No, that's very reasonable, but I'm almost hearing an internship here. Okay, that's really good. Thank you.
Do you take on interns?
You're muted, Elsa.
We do, Jeff, and it also depends on the length of the internship, and then also the age of the intern. So sometimes we get high schoolers who are doing their community service hours, and you know, they can be given one set of projects, and then someone, say from one of the universities, wants to intern for a quarter or for the year, and then they're given a different set of projects, because you know, those can be ongoing. But in any case, we provide some close supervision for them each.
Yeah, that'd be something to look into as a part of the directory, is who does internships and what are you looking for, those kind of things. Because I think there are students who have callings and feel very connected and want to do this kind of work. So I think that's something we could ask agencies about. So I think we can do this directory. I think right now I have an intern, so Maggie could land in. If we just got information from our, you know, just kind of figured out internally, or maybe this team figures out what do we want on the directory, then we can have Maggie kind of collect the information and help us get it organized before the next meeting.
Yeah, maybe it'd be helpful if between now and the next meeting, you and Marcy and I can work on an email with some of those bullet points of what we're considering putting in this directory that we could send to this group to review. And if you want to add and edit, then we can start developing from there. I like this. This would really be helpful. I mean, even just doing this youth well training yesterday, just to be able to have something more to offer, because we have one slide of a couple, like here's a link you can donate at and the phone number you can call, but I would love to be able to give them a guide like that has really, here's what you should do on the ground right now, depending on your interest level. So
I think that would make a big difference, because a lot of the people who want to get involved don't necessarily want to just buy a gift card. They want to do something more meaningful than that. And so I think having a directory to present at the end of these trainings would make a big difference. Because it's different when you have it all laid out in front of you than just saying, if you want to get involved, call us. That's a harder call to make than if there's a directory of all the different ways you can get involved. And I think that's a great idea.
And I think legislative advocacy can be one of those pieces too, that if people are interested, that we can connect them either with the local legislation group, or we can, there will be other state groups as well. So,
yeah.
I'm wondering whether we're at an important point here, because are we saying that the purpose of the trainings is largely informational? Or are we saying that there's a significant degree that we want engagement from the people who are in the trainings? I don't know the answer to that question, but
My impression is that the trainings are largely trainings and informational, but there are some people in the process of the training who become inspired and want to do more. Is that how you characterize it, Jeff?
Jim, I would
Yeah, I
say
think-
that
go ahead.
on Stessa's part, we do the informational. It depends on the time that we're offered for a training. So we can give the informational, great. And then with that comes resources about how to access help, whether someone is a significant other, a friend, whatever. But there's the other level that we like to give, that we prefer to give, which is the prevention side.
Mhm.
And in the prevention side, it includes the change of the mindset of the general public about the issue,
Mhm.
and sexual assault in general. I think I've told you all before that, yes, we acknowledge the domestic labor side of it, but we don't go into it very much in detail. We pretty much stick to the sexual assault aspect to it.
Mhm. Thank you, Elsa. That's really helpful. I mean, I'm an adjunct professor at Westmont, and I was for many years in charge of training for the law firm I used to work for. And I'm just wondering whether, if in fact what I'm hearing from you is you both want to inform and to engage, it might be worth having a look at the way you do your presentations to see whether you are maximizing both of those things. Because I've attended quite a few presentations where it's 95% informational, and at the end the presenter says, if anyone is interested in getting involved, just let me know. I mean, that's hopeless. I mean, you're going to get a really poor level of engagement that way. So I'm willing, if it's helpful, to work with anyone who's doing these presentations and just make some, have a look at it and see if there's anything that we can do together to kind of rebalance the information engagement part of it.
And
Go ahead, Nigel.
with that, Jim, we also have data collected after all these trainings of participant feedback, in which we ask them, I think one of the questions is, what additional things would you like to know, or what additional content? So it's not as directed as what we're talking about here, but I think it would give us some insight, and I think could feed into some of what Jeff's talking about too, of developing the level 2 training or level 3 trainings too. So that might be worth a separate conversation as well.
Well, I think one of the other things that's come up is we haven't known all the opportunities that people do have. And so people want to do something, and we have to tell them, we don't know. I mean, honestly, I'm meeting with somebody right now who's she's a 2-year Westmont grad who has come back to me after going through the Westmont downtown program, saying, what can I do? And I found a way to help her get the housing working group off the ground with me, right? But it can't all stream through. I've got to find out. That's why we're trying to find out how can I send people to Fighting Back San Maria Valley? How can I send them to Stessa? How can I send people to domestic violence or to the safe house, in appropriate ways? So I think this is going to help us begin get that information and work with all of our partners in appropriate ways, because not every organization has the same capacity to oversee interns, or volunteers are, with Noah's Anchorage, it's really difficult to volunteer with Noah's Anchorage for the right reasons.
Right.
So I think we are at a different point now. I think we're getting to a different point with what we can do with some of our trainings too.
I also think that sometimes I know as someone who came into this process 2 years ago, you have this feeling that this is a horrible thing and you want to do something about it, but it's hard to figure out where you fit in and being able to do something. So, and even my journey has, like you said, I came in originally to work on the buyer's class, so the Buyer School. So I mean, it's just, I think it's hard to find appropriate ways to volunteer. And so I think this could be really useful, and it would, I know it's a big undertaking, but it would be great if we could get at least some version of it together before the May the larger Youth Well training.
Right.
I also want to suggest that something like this, it seems to me, is important enough that we don't just do a directory and call it good, because I can tell you what's going to happen. Within 3 months, the directory is going to be out of date.
Mhm.
And then you give people a directory and they try the link and the link has gone dead. And the person you told them to call has left the organization. And it's a mess. It really needs 1 or 2 people who are going to say, this is my contribution. I am going to be happy to run with this. I'm going to keep it updated. I'm going to contact the people just to check, are you still offering internships? Because I sent someone to you and they never heard back. What happened? You know, if we're going to make this happen, it's got to need time and resources, frankly.
Well, so it can either fit under our working group as an ongoing, and it's on the agenda on a regular basis, so we're making sure it's updated, or it can be a part. I mean, we usually have at least 2 Westmont interns every semester, right?
Great.
So no matter what, I would look to our interns as being key to probably just making those phone calls like once a semester, right? And just making sure everything's up to date.
Right.
Are there any hiccups in the process?
Right.
And adding and subtracting. So I agree with you, Jim, but I think we keep it under this working group, and then maybe we just try to add future interns to this working group to keep that project up to date.
Excellent. That sounds very practical, manageable. Let's do that.
This is great. This is some great action items to take from today.
Yeah.
I do also want to create space just while we're talking about education to hear if there are any other updates from Stessa or Fighting Back as well about education events that you've done in recent months since our last meeting around human trafficking. All right. Well, I want to move us on, if that's all right, to talk next just briefly about this signage campaign. So this is an awareness piece that Judy Osterhage, who isn't able to join us today, is really hoping to push forward. But there is state legislation around requirements for hotels as well as transit authorities to have signage posted about who to call if human trafficking is observed, or who to call if you're a survivor of trafficking. And it's not being enforced. What we're learning is that with that kind of legislation, there is often no enforcement built into it, or at least no resources dedicated to the enforcement. And so we had a brief phone call this week with some partners from the Orange County Human Trafficking Task Force who have had a lot of success with their signage down there. And they said that their biggest success was a partnership they had with their transit authority, which I think is the equivalent of MTD here in South Santa Barbara County. And so they got a grant, a federal grant with their transit authority to actually create a whole communications campaign to train all of their bus drivers, and then to have these posters and awareness signs, both in the buses themselves, but also just in the stations. So it's something that is an ongoing conversation that we would like to explore, because we don't have that relationship right now with MTD, our airports, our train station. And then also just start to figure out the hotel piece, because Marcy can attest to, we've tried to reach out to a lot of hotels to offer these trainings, and some are really excited about it, and some just never call us back for any number of reasons. And we really need them to be trained. And so if anyone's interested in getting involved with that piece, let me know. I know I'm doing the thing we just said, where if anybody wants to get involved. But Judy has really been pushing this forward. So we do have a little bit of momentum there.
Do we have any data from Judy on how many hotel trainings she's done through her program? Could we get that from her?
No, I can ask her though.
Maybe it'd be great just to look at, we haven't been able to really even look at kind of that correlated data, like how many of our local hotels have actually gone through training.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because it was interesting to me because a couple of the hotel owners were very excited about our training we put on Wednesday, but they didn't show up. So we had made it free for them and they still didn't show up, even though they told me they're excited they were going to show up. So, but I'd love to know if Judy's had success with the way she's done it. Is that more successful? I'd like to look at what's the most successful way we've been able to do the hotel trainings.
Yeah.
And if she's been able to do it through that, virtual training, then maybe we just lean in more and more to that for her. I don't know, anyone else have thoughts?
Yeah, when I called about 30 hotels or emailed and then followed up with phone calls and then emailed again. There were some who were like, yeah, I think there were 2 out of the 30 that said, yes, we'd like the training. But I would say about half of them said that they had their own training in-house that they were required to do. And I don't know what that consists of or who develops that, but it's possible that that's a program like Judy's that they bring in-house, because I don't think that they are qualified to do it on their own. So they probably bring in a program like Judy's in-house. And then the other half really made me suspicious that they were sort of in cahoots with traffickers. I mean, it was so bad that they wanted nothing. I mean, they made me fearful of the phone call that I had just made. I mean, there were probably only 3 or 4 like that, but they were definitely, why are you calling us? And what, they seemed like they knew it was going on and they wanted to intentionally turn a blind eye to it because it was creating business for them.
Wow.
As scary as that sounds, it was just, and maybe that's me just being overthinking their negative reaction, but I don't think so. I think it would be naive to think that that way. So I suspect the ones who are doing the corporate training that say that they have their own in-house training, Jeff, I suspect that that's a program like Judy's that they bring in-house.
Marcy,
Yes.
would it be possible to ask, could one of us attend one of their trainings just because we might learn something? Make it non-threatening, but I'd be really fascinated to find out what really is going on.
Mhm.
I mean, I can ask them more questions about what the training they do is and who provides that training. I don't know that they would let me attend that training, but I could ask more questions about, because I did keep a list in that spreadsheet, Landon. It specifically said the ones that said that they did their own in-house training. It tended to be the more the large chains, like the Hiltons or the, those types. But I could definitely call them back and ask them what the source of their training is, and if maybe I would have to go up the corporate ladder as opposed to the local hotel. But I could try to get some information about that. I don't know how forthright they'll be about it, but they might be.
I think that could be really good data, even if all we can get is the who is offering the trainings, but it would be great to learn more about the content.
Yeah, the on that spreadsheet, Landon, each hotel that said that they were doing it in-house, I
Mhm.
specified that. So if you want me to, I can follow up with each of those before our next education working group meeting and see if I can play investigator a little bit and see what I can dig up.
I think that'd be very interesting.
Yeah.
Landon, just before I lost our community ed coordinator, I was interested in pursuing a MTD bus campaign
Okay.
for this specifically, and thought about seeking out resources to, like a grant, to fund something like that. I hadn't thought about the train or the airport, but I was focusing on the bus. The airport and the train sound, absolutely appropriate as well. Stessa has some friends on MTD's board, so we could perhaps approach. What has set me back with that is not having a community ed coordinator to
Sure.
help with that, because the bandwidth is just too narrow right now. But but I am interested in that aspect.
Okay. So Judy's very, very gung ho. And so I think I would love to loop you in those conversations and figure out a little bit more what you were hoping for. It was interesting down in Orange County, the angle they took was they got a grant through the Department of Homeland Security. And it was a transit security grant program. And so the signage campaign was about human trafficking, but also about anti-terrorism. And one other thing I'm not remembering. So it was a little broader, but it encompassed human trafficking. I assume if we, working from our angle, it would be a very different tack. But yeah, just worth noting. So also happy to keep you in the loop too. We're meeting with Judy on Tuesday to kind of figure out what the next steps are with that.
Can I just ask, does anyone know whether there's any liability upon hotels, for example, if human trafficking is occurring on their premises?
Judy would know, but she wasn't able to join us today.
Okay. I mean, it's just that having spent a lot of years working with companies as a lawyer, I know that they're going to take seriously that which creates direct liability for them to a much greater degree than just, oh, this is a good thing to do for the community.
Right.
And so,
imagine.
Go on.
I can imagine I've asked the task force to kind of, if they could let me know this about, because most of the survivors in prosecutions, they ended up happening around hotel motels.
Sure.
If you look at the data, and multiple times. So I'd imagine there's not too much that's happening there. But I think it'd be great to talk to Judy about it.
It's hard to, I think it's hard to attach liability to the hotels unless they're breaking a law, like not having the proper signage, if they're supposed to have proper signage, right? So like criminal liability, for instance, from like a parent of a child who was trafficked in that hotel, a minor, or any kind of criminal liability, it would have to relate to something that they did that other than rent the room, because as presumably when they rent the room, they don't know what's going on. So if they are neglectful in some way, i.e. don't have signage up that they're supposed to have, or I don't know, it would have to be something that they did wrong, or some way that they were negligent other than not noticing that someone was being trafficked.
Right. I don't want to turn this conversation into a legal discussion, but I would say instinctively as a lawyer, if you are running a small motel in Santa Barbara and you see the same guy coming back and checking in to a room, and he has a different young girl with him every time, or even the same young girl with him, and there's another guy there, after a while that creates a tort, and you are liable.
Okay.
And so it would be really interesting to know, as we talk with hotels about training, if we were also able to say in that conversation, you do realize, don't you, that you could be liable. That can really help them take their training more seriously, perhaps.
Well, and I know Judy knows more about this, but there are state mandates that for trainings from these, so if they're not training, which we know several of them aren't, there's liability right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe, Landon, for the next time we could flag up having Judy speak to us about that, because it does seem potentially relevant to our work.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great
Maybe
idea.
we could even, it could be a long shot, but it might be worthwhile getting our detective on the call.
Yeah.
Because it might even be a capacity issue, honestly.
Yeah.
For enforcement of certain things. So Landon, let's try to see if we can get her on the call as well.
But
Maybe
it
we
would be
could
a
have.
good question to ask Jeff, like when they do have a sting, we hear about these stings. When they have a sting that takes place at a hotel, does the hotel bear any responsibility for that? And are they prosecuted in any way.
I think it'd be good for her just to meet working group members anyway.
Yeah.
And so if we could just put a half hour, if we could have her on for like 30 minutes of the agenda.
Yeah.
And then for her not to be up on the rest.
Landon, the other comment I wanted to make in relation to transportation is that I believe Anne and her group have gone to truck stops.
Okay.
So I don't know any details, and that's about all I know, but it's worth an ask to Anne.
Okay. And with North County rate prices.
Mhm,
Great.
mhm.
Yeah, that's helpful. So I'm going to keep us moving. We had a point on here just to make a quick update about the collaborative coordination. Jeff, do you want to talk briefly about that?
Yeah, so I don't know who was on the force meeting, but we announced that SB Act is going to work with the task force moving forward. We're going to receive some money from their federal grant to help them coordinate a collective impact model for the task force. And basically what that means is the creation of a steering committee of about 18 to 20 members to create a 3 to 5 year strategic common agenda plan. So rather than working groups creating the agenda and then flowing that to your task force, it would be the steering committee talking about what are our key 3 to 5 things we want to accomplish in 3 to 5 years, and then pushing that out to the working groups and say, this is what we want to accomplish with education. This is what we want to accomplish with prevention or legislation. And then there'd be push and pull. I mean, we might come up with some creative things we want to push back on, get back to them. But so we are waiting on the funding to come. And as soon as that comes, we're going to have some. So Elsa, we're going to sit down with you and do a key partner interview. And then Audrey, if you want to let Edwin know as well, because we'd love to have Edwin and we'd love to have you, Elsa, on the steering committee. So we'll talk to you more about that, but that means you'd be a part of the team that comes up with this long-term strategic plan that we want to come up with over 3 years, which includes labor trafficking. So we haven't done very much on labor trafficking. So I'm going to be joining the LA task force, the LA labor trafficking working group from their task force next week to learn how they're tackling that issue. And our goal is also to start a labor trafficking working group to try to figure out what do we do in our county. And since we're so far back on that one, we haven't done much about it. I don't feel like we want to create a strategic plan until we get a lot more information. So I feel like the first strategic plan will primarily be about sex trafficking, and then we'll work in our labor trafficking over time. So I'm really excited about it because what we've seen with the victim witness as they try to coordinate and do direct services is really hard. So since we don't do direct services at all, we can just be the neutral backbone and try to support all of you. That's kind of what we're looking to do. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about that, but.
That's awesome, Jeff. A thought that I have in relation to the labor trafficking, and I know you said that's a bit more down the road, is perhaps involved. I don't know who the appropriate group would be in North County, but perhaps from South County would be My Cop or Cause.
Okay.
And
no, that's great.
They're highly involved in immigrant rights and also labor rights. And with a population, each of them slightly different population, but overlapping too of places or populations that would be highly targeted.
Yeah, I think that's one of my first goals is like to gather all the agencies that are already involved in the at-risk populations we're talking about. And in North County, especially Mesteco, and there's a lot of North County we really need to focus on. So Audrey at Fighting Back Santa Maria Valley knows of anyone, agencies we should be working with, please let us know. We'll probably start to pull that working group together in May. And it'll be exploratory, just trying to, all the agencies that know far more than we do, how do we support them and how do we tackle this issue?
Okay. I'll bring it up to Edwin. He would know more than I would of which agencies would be best.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And just one other business item on here that we're working with, SB Act is working with the victim witness to update this traffic stop website. I think we may have mentioned this on our last call, but this was something that the Junior League created a couple years ago as just a central hub for anything human trafficking related in Santa Barbara County. So it'd be a place where the general public can go to learn about just trafficking issues. And also the main thing I wanted to point out for this group is that on the Get Involved page, you can request a training. So it's just a simple way that we can disseminate this information. And then as training requests come in, we can then direct them to, oh, it's a North County group working with youth, we should send you to Fighting Back. Or if it's a South County group that's targeting parents of teens, then maybe it's STESA or one of the other groups. So just something to be aware of. That's our hope, is for that to become the web hub of the Santa Barbara County Human Trafficking Task Force. So we'll be building that out a little bit more over time.
How willing is Junior League still willing to have trafficking as one of their main focus?
Jeff, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I believe their next project was a TAY. They've done some TAY housing. So I think they're still working with 4 Kids, 2 Kids on housing projects.
Okay.
They're still in support of the South County Safe House. But I think they're trying to hand that more and more over to 4 Kids, 2 Kids. And I think they've helped open this new house. We are reaching out to Junior League to try to figure out where they're at, just with where they want to stay involved with the task force. And I don't think we have any clarity on that yet, but they've handed off the website. So I know there's things they're trying to create and hand off.
Jeff, I don't know if you
Is that
considered.
for Landon? Anything else you add?
No,
Jeff,
nothing.
I don't know if you've considered, but perhaps having someone from the funder world be involved in the steering committee, like somebody
Yeah,
from the Foundation Roundtable.
Yeah, we just had a conversation with Santa Barbara Foundation again. So here's what we're trying to do. We feel like just the coordination part. So what we have learned through coordinating homelessness in Santa Barbara through a collective impact model is what we need for sustainable funding for our part. And then if we can get that sustainable funding, we've been able to create new funding opportunities for other partners. So we're not trying to take away, that's the big thing, right? The money. We're not trying to take away money that might go to Fighting Back Santa Maria Valley or to STESA, because we know that you guys need your funding sources. But if things are not coordinated, agencies tend to fall into their own silos and we don't communicate, share data, do work like this. So we are going to continue to go after grants for our funding, which are more just coordination level grants. We're asking the Board of Supervisors to step in because the county really needs to take some priority in this and fund. And then we're going to look at private funding donations as well. That's kind of how we've done the work in Santa Barbara City with homelessness. Is City Council has given us some funding, Santa Barbara Foundation and other foundation partners. And then we have our giving, which naturally comes from our individual donors. And I imagine it's similar to your agencies, the way funding works for you. But coordination usually is not, because people perceive, well, you're just running meetings. They don't know everything that we do in between, like create directories or like trying to do the education. So if that makes sense. That might be it.
So before I do a little recap of some of our action items and we'll look at dates for our next meeting, I just want to open it up if there's any other business items that we haven't covered today. Anything from anyone else? Great. So I had proposed the next meeting date of Friday, May 6th at 12 p.m. That work for everyone on this call? So we'll shoot for that. In between now and then, it looks like we'll work with Judy to try and get her on the agenda to talk about hotels, and we can see if we can get law enforcement as well. We should have some updates about this signage campaign and where we're at by then. And then also we'll have met and sent out some bullet points for this directory that we can hopefully begin refining together as we then begin gathering content from you all to fill that out. It would be great, this might be wishful thinking, it would be great to have a very basic copy draft to be able to share with you all by that May 6th date. And then I will send out as well the meeting minutes and the links from today's meeting. So I think that's it. Thank you all for coming out today. We really appreciate your time, and we'll see you on May 6th.
Thanks everyone.
Landon. Great job.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Okay,
everybody.
bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.